Okay, welcome everybody to session number 4 or 5 today. We got two of the best and brightest from Zoominfo, Zach, you guys well know and well, and Millie
Beetham.
Beetham from Zoominfo. So we are here to talk about the new sales and marketing funnel, how to accelerate your revenue growth. So Zach, as you well know, is the director of sales development. And Millie is the director of revenue generation, not demand generation, revenue generation. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to Zach to kick things off, and I will see you guys in a little bit.
Right on. Thanks, Pete. All right. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. If not, just yell at me in the comments here. But we should be good. Just quick intros. Millie, why don't you go first?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm the director of revenue generation here at Zoominfo. I run a team to support our outbound prospecting. I'm excited to talk with you all today.
Cool. And then, I'm a director of sales development. I primarily oversee our customer outbound functions. I've also been on the new business side of the house. And I've worked a lot on our emerging markets side as well, building out international teams and a lot with mergers and acquisitions, building new teams as well. So please do throw questions and comments in the chat as we go. We'd love for this to be as interactive as possible. One quick housekeeping item before we get started. This is not the most glamorous part of the presentation, but as a publicly traded company, we do always share our safe harbor statement. I won't read the whole thing to you. The gist here is don't make any trading, purchasing, or selling decisions on Zoominfo's stock based on anything that we discuss in the presentation today. So I would imagine most of the folks in the audience are familiar with Zoominfo to some degree, but in case there's anyone who has not heard of us, we are a leading business-to-business intelligence provider. We sell a revenue platform called Revenue or RevOS that consists of 4 different platforms underneath that. One for sales, one for marketing, one for recruiting, and one for operations. All of those platforms are built on and based on the same data intelligence layer. So we have 63 million direct dial phone numbers. On a weekly basis, we're looking at over 1.6 billion records. We track almost 5,000 unique company attributes, 150 million plus email addresses, and so forth and so on. So we fuel go-to-market teams with all of the data they need for prospecting, for sales teams to know who to call and who to email, for marketing teams to know who to target, to build really, really clean and precise audiences, tracking technologies that companies are using, intent signals, all kinds of things like that. We get our information primarily from a few sources. One is a contributory network. So we collect over 100 million records daily through that contributory network. We also look at a lot of unstructured public information. So we look at 45 million web domains on a daily basis. And then we have a team of data scientists, researchers, data analysts that go through and make that data publishable and actionable to our customers. So a little bit more about the revenue operating system. Again, all built on sort of that Zoominfo data cloud. So there's really 3 layers to this. There's the intelligence layer, the orchestration layer, and the engagement layer. There's 4 major platforms. The one that most of you are probably familiar with would be Sales OS. So that's where you're going and looking up contact data, people's phone numbers and emails, conversation intelligence through our acquisition of Chorus. That's what most of our customers and most of our users are in on a daily basis, particularly in the audience here. We recently launched a marketing OS platform. So we're doing things like programmatic advertising campaigns, audience building, form enrichment, abandoned form tracking. We also launched a platform for recruiters and talent acquisition professionals recently. That's called Talent OS. So sourcing passive candidates, recruitment automation, employer branding, talent engagement, things like that. And then we also sell an operations OS platform, mostly to sales, marketing, revenue ops folks. So that's data as a service, lead to account matching, lead routing, enrichment plays into that as well. So these are kind of the four main platforms that we sell. Okay, so the old way of building go-to-market functions was really reliant on relationship selling. It was a lot of pounding the pavement, being out on the golf course, lobby surfing, whining and dining, salespeople using their Rolodexes and just relying on connections that they had, and their prospecting efforts were really going out to those places I mentioned and trying to build new relationships. But we're in a different world now, and that way of building a go-to-market system doesn't always produce the efficiency and the results that a lot of companies are looking for.
Yeah, I think the additional piece of that is, the lack of clear definitions, for KPIs that are mutually agreed upon by, sales and marketing. You didn't really have those, right? And without those definitions, there's been a lack of ability to really track, from the top of the funnel all the way to the bottom. So I think in the old way, right, sales and marketing really operate as, separate entities without a lack of, with a lack of collaboration and coordination. And the result is really, I think, Zach, if you go to the next slide, this is really the result, right? Major inefficiency, sort of endless roadblocks. Zach, you want to speak to some of those roadblocks sort of on the sales side?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who are SDRs, SDR leaders, or sales reps or sales leaders on the call, a lot of these things probably look pretty familiar to you, right? This roadmap of how do we get from a lead being routed to us or a contact that we find, excuse me, that we want to sell to or prospect into. We've got to figure out, like, are they even still at the company that our system is telling us that they're at? Hey, this account is on our website. Like, do we have any contacts in our CRM at that account? Then we go and look, maybe we even Google to try to find contact information for people. We're going to LinkedIn to try to verify that people are still at those companies. And so at the end of this whole process, we've done a whole bunch of work just to validate that lead is even worth working in the first place. And that kills morale on sales teams. It causes a lot of frustration. It's very time consuming. And in the scenario where we don't end up having any actionable data that we can go off of, we're just frustrated because we've already spent all that time and nothing good's coming from it.
I would say too, as a marketer, right? Sales is on their own to get a lot of this work done, and you end up with sellers and marketers who sort of both have their, their head in their hands without, the support needed to really get their work done. It can really become super overwhelming on the seller side. And then on the marketing side, there's that constant frustration, right? We send you all these leads, they aren't being worked, they're not driving revenue. I'm sure every salesperson has heard that from the marketing side. That doesn't breed, a culture of collaboration when really ultimately, hopefully collaborating provides, the additional resources that you need to get through those roadblocks. For everything that you want to do, whether you're marketing or sales, there's a different system. And at the end of the day, like, everyone goes and figures out their own path, their path of least resistance to getting their job done. And you end up with, technology that some, marketers are trying to push, but the reps don't adopt it, and you still have to pay for it. You end up with inconsistencies around the sales process, and on the marketer side, there's struggles with inconsistent messaging. We've put so much time into thinking about branding and messaging and targeting. Maybe the sellers aren't using that or well enabled to use it. And everybody kind of ends up with their own idea of what being successful looks like, and they go try to attack every day trying to do their jobs. But I'd say, like, most of us don't want that, right? I think marketing and sales can always come together on that point and say, sure, most of us don't want that. Marketers want their sales reps to be most productive and successful. The salespeople obviously want to be most successful. And so we're going to talk a bit about, how you can support essentially achieving this with a new approach to revenue growth. And so I want to kind of talk about this old funnel visualization, and then we'll talk about the new. So we've probably all seen some version of this before, right? The old funnel visualizations usually have marketing focused only at the top, right? Marketers are building awareness, they're capturing those leads. And then there's like that old adage of the handoff or the handshake from marketing to sales. And really what this results in is marketing doesn't quite know what happens to the leads after, they pass them off to sales. And sales is on their own to manage through the rest of that funnel, which, there's a lot to do if you look at that visual from that marketing handoff down. And so again, like we've discussed in the last slides, you end up in this like land of roadblocks and essential, inefficiency. Zach, if you want to kick on.
Yeah, so Millie and I actually work like this today in sort of the new funnel. It's not. There we go. So, for example, and like the biggest difference you'll see on this slide is that like our argument here is that marketing and sales really are both responsible for every level of the funnel, right? On the previous slide, we see like this is traditionally where marketing operates, and then sales is kind of responsible for everything down funnel. In the new go-to-market operating system, our argument here is that marketing and sales really are both responsible parties to each part of this funnel. So the new go-to-market funnel fosters coordination and collaboration. It does away with the idea of a marketing to sales handoff, which I think is a pretty common frustration that a lot of us have experienced in various places that we've worked. Both sales and marketing are responsible throughout the funnel to drive business, from building awareness to closing to growing and expanding existing customers.
Zach, are you okay if I share a little example of like how we work together today?
Yeah, please do.
So I think, again, you look at a visualization like this and you go, cool, great. Well, how do you do that, right? Like, what does that actually look like in my day-to-day? So Zach and I work like this today at Zoominfo. And so an example of this is within that prospecting part of the funnel. So I run a team, like I said, of outbound prospecting, essentially campaign specialists. And those campaign specialists, they support the outbound prospecting on behalf of Zach's sellers. And so the SDRs, or the other sellers that Zach is overseeing, are focusing their time on booking meetings. They're like reclaiming hours of work spent on crafting personalized, outbound emails and teeing up dials and remembering to follow up. And my team instead defines the target audience, crafts that messaging, sends on behalf of those sellers at scale. And then we help to queue those dials up instead of, leaving that to the sellers to do that on their behalf, on their own. We do this together, but it really takes a lot of coordination. We meet weekly and we hear feedback from both sides around what's working, what's not, where we might are seeing, a spark of opportunity. Should we dig into that? Should we experiment? Did that messaging not land? Were those prospects that we teed up in that dial list just not the right targets? And so we're constantly communicating and tweaking. And it's fostered a ton of collaboration, right? We do a lot more with less selling resources. And I think there's a lot to sort of glean and dig in on there.
So that all probably sounds pretty good, right? Sales and marketing working really well in harmony with one another, chasing the same results, being held accountable to the same metrics at the end of the day, right? Marketing having a responsibility or a tie to pipeline and revenue generation, sales having ties to things like conversion rates and activity levels on the leads that are passed over to us. That's only possible when we speak the same language and we unify around data as a source of truth. So efficient go-to-market hinges on a unified data strategy. One source agnostic flow, end-to-end data orchestration that supports all of your go-to-market automation. So that's everything from normalization and segmentation, it's lead to account matching, it's duplicate management, data federation across the organization, so that when I go to Millie and say, hey, Millie, we want to run a campaign on XYZ, like we have a specific language that we speak where she knows exactly like what resources we're going to need to go in and build out that campaign and then execute against that. And it also provides a really meaningful feedback loop for us, because then we can go back to Millie, and instead of the classic, like, hey, marketing, these leads aren't very good, I can be very specific and precise in where we went wrong in creating the audience that we went after, or where we missed the mark on the messaging that we used or how we positioned something. But the data is all flowing from the same source, and we're speaking the same language throughout that whole process. So we can get very, very precise with things that we want to experiment on, for one, and also like when things don't produce the desired outcomes that we want, we can get very, very granular into where our idea broke down and where the execution didn't meet what we wanted to see.
Yeah.
So go-to-market has to be unified at that foundational level, and that is the data, and that will emanate through your entire org. That's sales, it's marketing, it's RevOps, everyone who is under that go-to-market umbrella, this impacts.
I love to think about that. The feedback isn't, yeah, hey, Millie, these leads are bad. But instead, Zach's team comes to me and says, hey, we're noticing that, the phone numbers, here are working really, really well. We're getting tons of connects, and that's in this specific industry. And, oh, this specific persona who's like manager level and has this type of keyword in their title. Like those people we're seeing, a ton of really great fit meetings with. That's the kind of feedback I get. And that's really specific and allows me to really dial in our targeting and essentially deliver, better prospect lists the next time around.
And on the sales leadership side of that, it makes my job a lot easier, because I can spend so much more of my time actually coaching reps, right? Talking about things like talk tracks, objection handling, call openers, things like that, rather than talking about, hey, like these are the types of accounts you should be going out to find, to prospect. This is what a great fit account looks like. We still have to do a little bit of that, but we can spend so much more time in the actual substance of the operational side of selling. Like, what does a great cold call opener sound like? What does great objection handling sound like? How can we get past certain things? And so our reps can be a lot sharper on the phones and deliver a lot more value to customers, because we have so much more time that we're not doing all of the sort of legwork to get everything prepared for us. Like, we have that universe that we have a high level of confidence is going to be a really good audience, and we have a lot of confidence in our messaging. And so from a sales perspective, like, we can really, really zero in on execution, which is huge. So here are some of the trends we're seeing in the market today, emerging go-to-market trends. So basically every application that a company has, every customer-facing software application, can be a very strategic first-party data generator. Again, this can get really messy if we're not using a unified data source from end to end. But when you are using a unified data source end to end, all of your first-party software applications can be really, really valuable data generators for you. Personalization. We hear a lot about this in the market right now, right? Deliver the right message to the right customer at the right time, so you get personalized and very relevant experiences, whether that's on your website, or whether that's driving inbound traffic, whether that's with advertising, whether that's outbound emails, call campaigns, whatever. Data orchestration is huge right now. Future-proof architecture led by API connectivity to make your first and third-party data sources actionable. That's really big right now. Customer 360 with insights. So the customer journey will increasingly lean on more than just first-party data signals, right? In the past, the way we thought about the customer journey was a lot of first-party data, maybe a little bit of second-party data, but we didn't have a lot of third-party data coming into that. That's kind of table stakes in the market now, where third-party data is coming on top of, layering on top of first-party data from engagement apps, and that's driving your customer journey and your customer strategy. And then scalability, right? Supporting rapid growth through automation, targeted messaging, rather than just pouring more headcount in. So it's all about efficiency and getting the most out of the resources that you have, rather than, hey, I need to deliver 100 million more in pipeline, so I need to go hire X more SDRs and X more AEs to get that job done.
Yeah, I think a lot about personalization and scalability and how I can support our go-to-market function and support, the sellers. And to Zach's point, with this unified data strategy, if you have that underlying foundation, you have a good fill rate on industry, on title, on job function, and just with data points like that, you can take, email and calls, and turn them into really, 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 really productive conversations and dialogues with your potential customers.
Yeah, and a great example of that is like we use our intent signals. So that's one of the things that Zoominfo's data provides is intent signals. And so we run campaigns all across our business, both on the new business side and on the customer side around those intent signals. And we know that those conversations generally are going to be warmer than if we were just doing like an ICP analysis and saying, hey, we want to go after these companies because firmographically they fit who we want to sell to and we think they're going to be good fits. So you start to layer these things on top of each other and you can get really, really tactical with the types of campaigns that you can run. So what action can you take to start operating with the new sales and marketing funnel in mind? So what we're showing here on this slide are like actual triggers that you can turn into plays that your sales and marketing teams can coordinate on to drive revenue across the business. And Millie, if you want to expand on maybe a couple of these that we do here.
Yeah, absolutely. Specifically, I think I want to dig in even further to the sort of prospect and customer behavior. I think one of the things, to really make sure we drive home is there's so much opportunity, right, to leverage intent signals like Zach was saying around, people are looking online or researching, certain topics or ideas or themes. And those are, turning that intent into great, that person is potentially looking for a solution or a solve to that thing. And that can absolutely help you acquire new business. It should not be forgotten that there are also intent signals coming from your existing customer base. And so if you're not thinking about, leveraging, the potential for upsell within your customer base by using the same kind of intent signals and any real buying signal, right, type data. Think about, visits to your website. Zoominfo has a tool called Websites. We track that and we take a look at those domains that are visiting our site. But intent plus those websites plus feedback, people attending your events, your webinars, etc. Anything where that customer is actually buying in to you and your what you're putting out there into the market. It should not be lost on anyone that there's so much potential upside on the customer side as well. We spend a ton of time making sure that we're driving as much revenue there as we are in terms of leveraging that same data on the new side. One of the other, plays that is just such an easy one to leverage here, especially when you're coordinating on both the sales and marketing side, is just making sure you're enriching your forms and capturing sort of any abandoned forms and going back on those. There's no reason today that you need to have a form that has 20 fields in it to capture all the data you have. There are tools, our own and others out there that you can essentially use one email address and enrich that data behind, and also then track if that person is bouncing off, right, and not actually filling out that form and going back to them to say, hey, what happened? How can we, support you? Is there more information you need at this time? Yes, there's a hallelujah on reducing fields in the chat. And yes, marketers and salespeople alike and customers can all approve on that one. I think one of the other pieces I wanted to call out to sort of on the pre-sale side we're talking about, there's data in all of these different parts of your organization. I think it's really, really important that going back after, old engagements that maybe never turned into opportunities is a really, really great way to bring a lot of those different data sources, first, second, third party together to come up with a strategy to make sure you go back out to those folks. There's no reason if you engaged with that person 3-4 months ago that you can't go back and try, a different angle in terms of getting them back in the door or restarting that conversation. And you have so much data at your disposal to be able to craft that message in a way that's not, you begging, but actually going out and saying, here's what I heard from the last time we talked, here's how we've improved that feature and functionality. So love to see if you, would be interested again in taking that call, right? That you can craft that message because of all that additional data that you have on those people, and bringing it all together really makes that super powerful.
Awesome. Well, I'm back on stage here as we are wrapping up the session, but we do want to have one question from the audience here. So from Brendan McCloskey, regarding routing, is it fair to say some leads may be routed to the right seller, but other leads may not be ready and routed back into a nurture journey or a re-nurture journey?
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of scoring and looking at and weighing different types of behaviors, whether that's a content download, whether it's clicking on an ad, whether it's a form fill, and determining exactly what is ready to go to an SDR for follow-up immediately. We also think about leads in terms of hot and warm. So we will follow up on hot leads similarly to how we follow up on warm leads, but hot leads are like those form fills. Those are the ones we want to get to the quickest. Those are the highest intent. And we want to capture those as soon as possible. There are plenty of leads that we get that may not be ready yet. And based on, the content that they downloaded or based on what actions they took, they may not get that intent score to be routed right away. And they will get put back into some type of email nurture, or we'll do some display ad against those. Like Millie said, we'll run sort of prior engagement campaigns on some of those types of leads as well. So yeah, it's a great point.
Awesome. Well, Zach, Millie, amazing as always. Thank you both for participating today. And if you have any questions, concerns, anything, head over to the Zoominfo booth. I'm sure some Zoominfo folks will be there. If not, Zach and Millie. But thank you both again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thanks, guys.